already hard to fill positions. So that was the strategy and philosophy that Miranda and I discussed. We, of course, wanted to meet the market at that 50th percentile number for each job. We didn't know if that would be possible, but turns out it was possible. So that is, again, great. The next actual step is to match those jobs, like I mentioned. So basically, that just means we take your job description that Miranda and Kelly and department heads worked on, and then we match those with whatever standardized survey job descriptions we have. When I say standardized, many of them, we have many, and so do our other surveys. So generally, we had direct matches, and sometimes we just kind of had to, I mean, honestly, they were all pretty much direct matches. Where we need to, we can apply some adjustments, but there was great data for the jobs that you all have. And just to note that we do match by the job description and not just by the title. After this, we pull that compensation data from these jobs, and then we build the structure. Okay, so a little bit of the minutia, but I know it's important to you all to hear, where is this data coming from? How is it relevant to us? So when we pull data, we are not just pulling from everywhere nearby, from all of Colorado, national. We are pulling from the Denver Boulder area, so competitors, all of Colorado, and we adjust those for the cost of labor in Nederland. And then when in certain surveys, we can narrow it down to that cost specifically in Nederland. The industry is government, and we're looking at employer size of 50 to 100 employees whenever possible. Along with adjustments, once we kind of get to that salary data point that we're pulling, so we will add adjustments where we need to make it work for Nederland, make it, comparable to the cost of labor in Nederland. All of these surveys also are published at various times throughout the year. So we just want to make sure that it's aged forward to the common date. Sorry about that, of 1/1/23, missing 23 in there. And so to do that, we use an aging factor. Essentially, it's called the Employment Cost Index. It's just like Consumer Price Index instead of for basically inflation for goods and services. It is inflation for wages. So that percentage is applied to bring everything forward to 1/1/23. So all these rates are up to that date. And quickly, here's just a list of those surveys used: Employers Council surveys, and then ERI and HR market analysis, which are two very large, essentially kind of mega surveys of what Employers Council does. They have many more members, and they collect this data from their members, and they are national, and then it's narrowed down by those factors like Nederland, employee size, and government industry. Are there any questions so far that I can answer, just to check in?
I've got one overall. Then how big was your sample size?
It's a great question. So we aim to pull data from those with over 30 data points. So that is always our goal, is at least over 30 for that sample size. Any other questions? Okay. Jump in at any time. Feel free.
One more before you move on. How big a variance was there? You were going from Denver. No, you wouldn't be doing Denver because you're doing smaller teams. But how big a variance was there from the main?
Oh, from Colorado or from
Colorado?
From Colorado, that's a great question. I actually would need to pull that up really quickly. I believe it was, gosh, Miranda, do you recall off the top of your head? I'm sorry that I can't.
No, I was going to pull it up too.
Okay. I want to say 3%, but I don't want to throw out a random number.
It's pretty much right down the fairway then.
When you look at all Colorado, how do you adjust? Like you said, you adjusted Netherland and then Boulder County, et cetera. How do you do that?
Yeah, so for the Boulder County rates, we didn't adjust those just because they're considered direct competitors essentially. For the all Colorado data, we adjusted by a percentage difference of the cost of labor or wages in Nederland versus the state of Colorado. And so Colorado, our wages are overall lower. So we apply that percentage, that percentage increase to bring the data up to Nederland rates.
I guess that's my question. How do you figure out what Nederland rates are?
It's a great question. Yeah. So one of those surveys, ERI, they have, in addition to the salary data, they have geographic, like a geographic assessor. And so they have data from all of the salary data points that they gather that shows basically the percentage difference between two areas. And so based on that, they have this percentage difference. That's standard.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Kind of.
Kind of.
I mean, all we land is they have that percentage. That doesn't really mean like how does Netherlands percentage materialize? That's what I'm curious.
Essentially, that the wages paid for the same positions in Colorado versus Nederland are higher in Nederland. And so they, based on all of the salary data they've collected, they've seen, for example, a maintenance technician make, for example, 3% higher in Nederland than in Colorado, or than the all Colorado number.
Okay. That makes more sense. Thanks.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay. So for the salary ranges, once we have that 50th percentile, or basically what the market is paying on average for these positions, for your positions, we were able to use that 50th percentile for all of the jobs as the midpoint of this new range. So that's great. That's the goal, is that's, midpoint, being competitive there in the range. So of course, minimum is the lowest point, maximum is the highest. What the spread is essentially that percentage difference between the minimum and the maximum. So a little bit higher just means that you start lower, max out higher. And then a little bit of a more narrow range just means you start higher, but you end lower. But all of those have the same midpoint for each job. As in that's based on the 50th percentile. That does not change. Okay, so when we created the pay structure, everything really is based on that external equity, making sure we're at that market number of the 50th percentile for our midpoint. And then as far as any kind of internal equity, we just need to make sure that these numbers line up for reporting relationships, for example, so that there's a good kind of percentage difference between technician 1, 2, 3, lead supervisor. Want to make sure they're not really bumping into each other, causing some compression between those two positions. That was the most of the internal equity piece that we use, and it worked out really well actually with the market data. So there wasn't a whole lot of tweaking that we needed to do to this. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry about that misprint there. Should say town of Nederland. So once bringing employees up to the minimum of the new pay range, we're reviewing individual employee pay rates, looking at the ability to pay, and essentially bringing everyone up to that new minimum. That's the first step. Just bring everyone up to the new range so that everyone is in line when new employees are brought on. It's not causing any kind of, they're starting around that same pay. Everyone's going to be in this new range. Okay. And so here finally, after all of the background information, is the salary structure that you have now or that's proposed. So again, these are all by just the specific position. Um, this column here, the midpoint, is based on that 50th percentile, what the market is telling us competitors are paying on average for these roles. So just really trying to be competitive with the market for the midpoint of the range. And that's a great goal to have for employees in the future, gradually bringing them up within the range. This range here with the minimum is a great starting point. Any questions about the structure as you're glancing at it now? This is kind of the meat of that.
Just notice that the minimums seem to be 80 to 90% of the mid, and the maximum seem to be about 120% of the mid, almost across the board. Is that a particular formulation that led to that number, or was that just straight up doing comps across the state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we used a consistent spread across the board. That was a point that Miranda wanted to do so that it's essentially it's equal across the board, so that everyone kind of has the same opportunity to move up within the range. A great observation.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else at this time?
And maybe if I could just add into that, kind of the point of that is, of course, we want to encourage people to consider to advance in their careers if they so choose, but they can also choose not to. They could want to start as a streets operator and stay there, but still know that they can make a great livable wage by not always feeling like they have to climb the ladder to do so.
Exactly. Since you all have, a limited number of positions or smaller number of positions, the upside of that is that often employees stay for a long time. So it does allow people, like Miranda said, to move up within the range that they're in without having to change those positions. Okay. So as far as employee adjustments, really the goal of these, as I did kind of mention, maintain internal equity. Everyone is in this new range. Increase retention. We're starting with a new range. There's more opportunity to move up. Many employees are receiving increases to get to that new competitive range. And that does make us competitive with other employers in the area. And also, of course, to reward current employees and bring them up to this new range, not like just new employees are getting brought up at a higher pay rate. Okay, just some additional considerations that we recommend, Employers Council recommends going forward. Employee increases can occur over time to, of course, this data is not stagnant. So adjusting for cost of labor as it increases each year or over the years, and continuing to ensure we're being competitive in the market and continuing to focus on retention. Performance reviews are one option. A standard rate, such as for that cost of labor, is another option. And then reviewing these annually and making adjustments to specific positions just whenever the market is really showing a big increase, for example. And that's usually, again, position-based. If it's been several years and a new salary survey needs to be conducted, there will probably be an increase in all positions, but annually, it may just be a few here or there that would cause some additional increases. Finally, just to kind of put a bow on this whole process here, we want you to know at Employers Council that these are data-driven results. They are consistent. We can update them every year using this exact same data that we've gathered here, matched to the exact same jobs, and just essentially update with new data. These are very credible surveys. Nothing is crowdsourced. Everything's coming directly from the employer. We definitely aim to build a structure that's sustainable over time. So starting many employees at the minimum, many employees are already within that range. This structure will hopefully last for a very long time. And then occasionally, again, updating rates, updating midpoints when needed, which can be a very easy change to make, at least from the practical perspective. Organizationally, that's always a little bit different, but updating it is very simple. We want this to continue to aid in attracting and retaining employees. We want this to be a cornerstone of your compensation philosophy and your total compensation package. We have these good ranges in place now. We're meeting the market. And again, we want these to last you a while. We do recommend that rates be updated regularly, or at least a market analysis be conducted every couple of years, because it will change, of course. Positions, values, and skills gaps change over time in addition to cost of living. That is all that I have for you guys as far as the presentation. I just want to turn it over to Miranda, answer any questions y'all may have, any mix of the two.
So I was just going to go over kind of our ask and a little bit of what's in the packet, but of course, Jenny will stick around. In the packet, we gave you 4 documents. We gave you a salary range, which is what Jenny just went over. Again, it has that minimum, middle, maximum. I think it's important to just reiterate that that mid-range is the competitive wage. And that all we're really looking for is, again, as Jenny noted, to get everyone to their minimum. So we're in that competitive range. And then over time, take into consideration longevity, performance, and other things to start moving people closer to that mid-range. There's a certification chart. So for a long time, we've really how do we grow specifically within public works? What's the opportunity for employees who start with us? Because really what happens is you come in, you're an operator, you maybe get some certs, and it feels pretty stagnant, which is why a lot of people are often leaving. Say they get their CDL, there's not a huge financial incentive for that, and they can go be paid more elsewhere. So sat down with Mark, Andrew, Nikki, and just kind of thought through what is a path that a public works staff member could take from an entry-level operator to potentially a supervisor. What's the journey they could take, and maybe what's that path, both performance and certification-wise, to get them through. And the whole point is, you welcome someone on, say as a parks trainee, and you say, hey, this is how you get to these next levels. And, we want to champion and support you getting there and building out the path. Because I think that's where we see a lot of turnover is in public works. So it was really important to us that we created that certification chart or that flow for how you move forward. There's also the job details, which really shows the data cuts that Jenny pulled, where she pulled them from. And we went through that. I did a first couple rounds with Jenny and then brought in all the respective department heads who are here. I actually took out the salaries and just said, hey, does this job sound like your job? In an effort not to sway someone by the number, and really took it from that approach. And once we felt like we landed on jobs that were similar in nature to ours, then we started plugging in the figures. So that takes you to probably the most important column, which is the employees tab. So the employees tab shows you where town staff, what they make now versus what is their minimum, and what is that discrepancy between current pay and just the minimum. So in the chart, you see that there is a $209,487.14 discrepancy between, as a collective whole, what we all should make and what we do make. What I'm recommending, and brought it to the department heads and asked for their support, was that anyone who needs less than $10,000 to get to their minimum would get it right here, right now, in a sense, under a supplemental budget. They would receive that pay increase in 2023. There are 6 employees who need more than $10,000 to get to their minimum. And in an effort not to put a huge strain on a supplemental budget, the recommendation is a 50-50 split, where they get half now under the supplemental budget, and then they would get the other half in January as a part of the 2024 budget. So you can see those financial figures in here. Rita was gracious enough to pull that together, then the supplemental budget that shows that. Sorry, Tanya, do you have questions?
Yeah, it's not on the screen what you're talking
I
about.
wasn't sharing my screen. It was just in the packet. I
Oh,
can.
what page then?
Give me 1 second. So here it is.
Page 34.
And here is the document we're referring to. It's the studies, compensation studies. So again, total cost to bring to the minimum, this 209. Then you have the immediate impact. And one thing to remember is what you're looking at here is annual salaries. Half the year's gone. But of course, from a budgeting standpoint, we're always going to take annual salaries for budgeting. So what you're looking at, of course, you have to consider we're only paying the remainder 6 months at these new salaries. But in recognizing that, we have underpaid staff, almost all of them are underpaid. And so to me, it felt very important to try and ask for a supplemental budget and those increases now versus telling the employees, hey, we know you're underpaid, but you need to hang out for 6 months before we rectify it. So that is why I'm asking for that bit of that right here, right now kind of comment. But again, recognizing that there is the huge financial impact for those top 6. Just a couple considerations here. Again, that's my ask. And I just want to remind, we know what the future is for the employees we have. There was also a commitment or kind of a verbal desire of some board members to bring on a sustainability coordinator full time. So I offered that reminder in the packet that that's yet another position that's not being considered under this compensation study, but something the board may or may not want to address as a part of the 2024 budget. The salary range for that comes off of data that I worked with Leah on. Leah Haney, current sustainability coordinator, and has not been vetted by Employers Council because she's not an current staff member. We have all departments here, and the reason for that is to come with every department head because this is really a united front. I took some of the initial brunt of this work, but of course wouldn't do this without everyone in this room here with us. And so they're also here to answer questions, but we just wanted to show you that we as department heads feel that this is the right move. And what we're asking of the board kind of specifically is, first, do you have questions? And second, do you approve our recommendation of increasing the salary of any employee to their minimum salary now if the gap is less than 10,000 and doing a 50-50 split for those with more than 10,000 in the gap? And if so, do you direct us to bring back a supplemental budget on August 1st for review and ideally approval?
Well, I think it would be helpful to at least state what the impact would be to the current year's budget. I mean, next year's budget we'll deal with really next year fundamentally. So before seeing the full 2024 budget, it's pretty hard to say exactly what we'll do. But I think for this year, I mean, it seems to me that fund balances wouldn't decrease that badly. So that's some creativity on your part and Rita's part and on everybody else's part here to cut costs and make enough room for this to technically be feasible, which I think from what I'm seeing, it is technically feasible. But just so we could get the numbers out there, if I'm understanding it correctly, we'll see an $83,830 decrease in the general fund. Something
Correct.
along those lines,
That
right?
is correct.
And that was already in the red, right? So that's
Right.
further 83,000 decrease in the general fund
That's
and a 16,643 decrease in the community center fund.
Yep.
But that was in the black and that will continue to be in the black. So that to me seems perfectly reasonable and I don't really want to I don't have any bone to pick there. So is there anything else I'm missing that we would lose here? That's the only
That's the-
decreases from the budget amounts that we're looking at here.
Correct.
Every other fund is staying right where it
Correct. And I think that
already was.
what's important to note too is, we're mid-year, so who knows what we're looking at from a savings standpoint as we get further in, but that's just not how budgeting works. So
Sure.
we're budgeting on what we believe to be, if we were to exhaust every line item,
Right.
this is what you're looking at.
Yeah.
That's in the supplemental.
Which
budget.
again, the 243,000 deficit that we're talking about that is all of us being at our max, right? And we know, I mean, that's not even going to start till probably August. We
Right.
have 4 months left.
Yeah.
So it will definitely not be that, but that's how we budget it.
Yeah, I mean, we know from the May financials for the year to date there that we were 34% decrease in expenses, which is significant. Even though we had a 12% decrease in revenue, that's still
Right.
you know, a significant amount of savings that we've made already this year. That is assuming that we don't plan on then spending all that later on, right? And so I think that's kind of what it's contingent upon, right? It's like, I feel pretty comfortable with all of this, knowing how good town has been in saving despite the fact that revenues are down.
Right.
Or have been down at least up till May.
Right. And while we're not talking about 2024, I mean, as a group, you know, when we worked on our goals and department heads, it was what comes first. And it was unanimously staff. There was no one who wavered in that. For us, it's staff, and that's staff compensation, that's staff training, their development, and just ensuring the longevity of staff. And so not only are we committed to always being good stewards of town finances, but really looking to roll that into next year as well, and operating on a similar budget as this year, where normally we do kind of an across the board percentage increase, and really felt like as a whole, besides maybe the one-off things, we could probably work the same budget we have in 2023 and 2024 while we evaluate revenue sources in order to allow this to happen. The one thing I would say is, one of my concerns would be, you know, that 50-50 split. You know, those people who are getting the 50-50 split are the ones who take on a lot more responsibilities in some capacity than other staff members. And so I would hate to see them get 50% under a supplemental budget and then be at risk of not receiving that other 50% to get them to their minimum. And so, you know, we proposed it that way. It is possible to consider moving everyone to their minimum now. I mean, that's something I would really want to fight hard for, is not telling half the people in this room, hey, you might not get to your minimum next year. I just think that, you know, back to kind of that equity, if we're talking, we're going to move everyone to a minimum, we're moving everyone to a minimum, whether you need $3,000 to get to that minimum or you need $40,000 to get to that minimum. That commitment has to be there for me across the board.
Yeah, so I think, well, you know, a budget isn't passed until a budget is passed, right? So there's no way we can preemptively pass a budget, I don't think. You know, so there will inherently be risk in that fundamental fact, right? I personally am fully on board with that. Of course, we also can't throw in a bunch of projects that we want to do in 2024 that would put pressure on that. So I think it's kind of that two-way street, where as long as we get something, like from my perspective, as long as we get something that is in accordance with sort of the philosophy that you laid out here, that we cut back on, you know, starting big projects, because we have a whole bunch of projects we need to finish anyway, and 2024 would be a great time to finish them, I think, personally. No time like next year, but
Well, and that's how we feel, you know, in doing our goals work session, really recognize that we have a lot of things we need to just finish, and we want to just finish. And people have known me for a while. I've said, like, can we just have a year of stabilization? Can we just have a year where we invest in staff and we work on the projects that are already before us and not add in? And that's a message to myself too, because we're always looking for something new and different. But those of us, those department heads, we are unanimous in that decision, that we know that in order to put our staff first, it comes with that kind of halting, that stabilization, finishing the projects before us. And we're also, you know, the department heads have graciously allowed Rita and I to take the lead on the budgets. Normally we'd go to them, we'd let them dream with us, and then we would go back and work the figures, where we know that for us, staffing is going to come first. So we're going to get the staffing numbers set, and then we'll go back to the department heads and say, all right, here's what else we can do. But again, in an effort to ensure that this minimum happens across the board, we're going to build the budget that puts that front and center.
Did you want to mention about the Boulder County Sheriff's, how that's going to be different next year too? Just so we got that.
Yeah, so we did adjust in the supplemental budget. We just did a handful of things, but mainly did some work on Boulder County, and just recognizing that though there's a lot of line items that don't have to exist anymore. There's some adjustments there in terms of personnel primarily, and all the things that go along with personnel. You know, recognizing that what is budgeted here for Boulder County coverage is less than your contract. But, you know, there will be quite a bit of savings or some adjustments there within the police department, because so many of those line items won't be needed as we go into 2024.
Right. So what we did for 2023 is just the best we know how, you know. We decreased the revenue by 21,000, but even that, you know, that's, I don't know if it's going to happen that we're going to bring in 20,000 this year. So I just want to make sure everybody knows those are estimates for the rest of this year.
I did talk with Boulder County and we talked about writing tickets and it's happening. And so that's why we felt comfortable leaving the revenue. But yeah, I think as we discussed in the goals work session, like revenue has to be something we all work on. And, I definitely know the Parks Department is really evaluating what ways they can play a significant role in that. But we just need a year where, again, we kind of invest in staff, finish current projects and focus on revenue. And that I think is our unanimous philosophy as we head into 2024 in order to build the space for what we're proposing here to actually happen.
Could you just remind me what the 521,500 in public works revenue is there?
So that's the loan. So it's an in and out. So that was a $511,000 loan for all the new equipment for the streets.
Right.
So that was another add. And then the only other adjustment was a carryover of a portion of the match for the sustainability coordinator. Otherwise, we tried to keep this pretty minimal in terms of what we adjusted under the supplemental to make it clear that we're primarily focusing on wages above all, and then the fringe benefits that go along with that.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions for Miranda, clarifying questions before we go to public comment?
Well, I had asked Miranda if we could use the that marijuana tax money that's for public works to cover, or for Parks and Recs to cover the salary increases within Parks and Recs. If it's allowed, it is allowed, but so that would be a conversation we can have in the future during budget times. Because that's a bit of money, I imagine, that's coming in, but we'll find out at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think we're looking at about $20,000 a quarter. So it won't by any means float the salaries, but the way in which you wrote the ballot measure, and I'm going to pull up my email to Tanya really quick, is it says the funds were to be used for parks and recreation programs and service and or other lawful municipal purposes. I would want to be mindful of kind of a further conversation with Nikki as parks manager of just kind of the impact of moving that to salaries and what does that free up for programming and maintenance, because that's obviously a big part of this too. Again, not asking to do more. And if we want to do more, we're going to come to you with grants and try to figure out how to fund it that way, but making sure that we're not cutting anyone's ability to do their job over the salaries too, because that doesn't help anyone.
Right, but that money's never existed before, so I'm just, and there's no new projects really. So anyway, just for future conversation.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, I don't know how it would be possible, but the other thing that I've been wanting to see for quite a while is a CIP fund for the town, and whether or not, getting that started in some small way, even, I think would be great. So if that could be part of our considerations for the 2024 budget, if we're kind of foregoing large expenditures, we're foregoing big projects, maybe we can take a fraction of what we might have done on that front and start to put it into some kind of a CIP fund while raising staff salaries.
And one thing I want to be really mindful of, and Andrew reminds me of this quite often, is of course you have funds, right? You have the general fund that most of us live and breathe out of, but you also have water, sewer, community center, who may actually have the financial means to continue forward with some of their great projects. And so really taking into consideration, like, don't be shocked if Andrew comes forward with water and sewer projects, because that fund can handle the salary press.
For sure.
It doesn't mean that we've just like thrown this whole philosophy out the window, but recognizing that are some opportunities in certain funds.
Yeah, I'm mostly thinking about streets.
Yeah,
projects.
which falls into our, obviously, general fund. They do have their own streets fund, but we did tie up quite a bit of streets funding into the equipment. And so the rollover won't be as significant as we've done historically.
But if we establish that line item, it doesn't have to be like a separate fund, but if we just establish some kind of line item each year where there's some small percentage of the town's budget that is going into a CIP fund, I think that'd be great.
What is a CIP fund? I don't
Just
know.
a capital improvement projects fund. So something that we can draw from to match grants in the future.
Well, where does the money come from?
It would come from we would just allocate a small percentage to a CIP fund each year so that we would basically have a savings account within our own town.
Oh, I see.
But we would lockbox it for capital improvement
Gotcha.
projects.
Except we don't have any extra money right now, but I like the idea.
Well, the town currently has 5.2 million That is, there's 1.2 of that is restricted. We've of course done some investments, but it's not a dedicated CIP fund, but that is an opportunity. But what a CIP fund would do is it would free up the money in the budget. Where right now, these are funds and reserves. We don't have access to them unless we come forward making that request under a supplemental. Where, yes, I mean,
Okay.
we scrounge when it's time for grant time. We're like, this is a great grant. Where is the match going to come from?
Oh,
We're
well,
just,
yeah, we got $5 million. I didn't see that in the budget.
so it's we did add it to the aim that currently the town has 5.2 in reserves, and of that 1.2 is restricted.
Okay.
Which
I'm
is
just-
kind of what and what I'm kind of saying is you can do this, you can float these salaries, you can do this both now under supplemental and in 2024. It can be done. No, you shouldn't be banking on your reserves, but it can be done while everyone puts all of their effort into increasing revenue. But this is not a huge ask when you do have a substantial reserves. And I biasly and unbiasedly would argue that one of your biggest assets are town staff, and that those are the individuals who should be invested in versus having this money just sit in reserves. Find a way to put it back into your talent that's going to carry us forward as we work on all these new projects.
I'm sorry to ask a stupid budget question, but so the general fund available fund balance 773,093 is separate from that money that's you're talking about, that 5 million. That's just money that is that we're available to use. I'm
Correct,
not
right, because we
saving
didn't
for-
budget out what was sitting in reserves. And we would need to, under a supplemental or plan ahead of time through a CIP budget, to have it as a part of what is approved for 2024.
And if we get good at what we did in our working session with our goals, and we know those projects that are going to be coming up and that we want to accomplish in the next 18 months, Miranda, we would allocate those matching funds into the CIP, knowing that those are the projects that we're going to accomplish in the next 18 months, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right. So a CIP just becomes, as Eric said, a line item to back up from a budgetary standpoint the goals we said we were going to accomplish.
Yep. And those goals, just for the community to know, we're going to bring those goals. So the BOT had a goals work session alongside department heads and really narrowed down into what are our top priorities for the remainder of 2023, 2024. And we'll bring those before the community for review on the 18th. But really kind of what we found is that it's really just finishing out what we started. It wasn't, these lists weren't like, what new can we do? It was, let's finally reach resolution of securing funding or finishing a certain project. And what I appreciated about town staff is, I've talked to Nikki Dunn, it's like needing that little bit of that breathing room of like, let us just finish what's before us, because you have a small but mighty team here who does a ton of incredible things. But we'd love to check some boxes. We'd love to reach some resolution of a few of these items. And that's why we're really asking kind of that pause of sorts, because we already have so many incredible things before you, and we just need the capacity to finish it, and ideally the staffing stability to do it. It doesn't help when we have these great projects, but yet we're cranking out, we're turning over staff and we're having to rehire constantly. If we invested in the team, no, we can't assume that everyone will stay with us all of 2024, but this helps. This sure does help. And all the department heads reviewed it with their staff, and everyone was pleased, and they felt good about where they could go with us. And so I think that commitment to them, that we're studying this and we want to look at what their path could look like, will allow them to feel that much more invested in wanting to be here for a long term.
Bad timing for me to eat that food. So probably always is here. But any other questions for Miranda or staff before we go to public comment?
Right, and just for you, those of you online, we do have every department head in this room. So Nikki, Andrew, Mark, Rita, Dawn, and Peter, they're here, I think, to support my ask, of course, more than anything, but I'm sure they're also happy to share their feedback or their thoughts if you have any questions for them.
We'll go in the room first. If anyone here has any public comments on this discussion item for compensation study. There's a microphone.
Good evening. Nice to see you again. I guess I just want to make, oh, I'm sorry. I'm Larry Tassaday. Here tonight as the Sustainability Advisory Board's Zero Waste Subcommittee Chair. And we did send along a letter that we wrote about full-time sustainability coordinator proposal. And I do want to speak to that just very briefly, but if that's okay. But I, first of all, want to second everything that I've heard from Miranda about bringing the staff up to minimum. To me, it's just kind of like a no-brainer. I can't imagine it not happening, to be honest, working as a volunteer for the town. So having said that, and imagining that that's an investment in the future, as Miranda said at one point, something that's crucial. I do want to encourage you to think about 2024 as a time when you could expand your investment portfolio of staff. And that would be by bringing what is now a half-time sustainability coordinator working as a contractor with some support from Boulder County, bringing that person onto the staff as a full-time person working in an assigned department. To me, this is the kind of thing that is inevitably going to happen. And I do think that 2024 would be a time for you to start thinking about it. One concern that the Zero Waste Subcommittee has is that we feel at this point, Boulder County will continue its supplemental funding for this position. If the town of Nederland shows resolve on wanting to bring this position into a full-time role, we are not certain that that would occur otherwise. So we feel that this is a great opportunity to perhaps enlarge Boulder County's support for this position. We think it's very important. And I can just tell you, as someone who's been spending every afternoon at the farmers market for these recent events doing zero waste work, we are constantly besieged both by people who are locals who like this town and by people visiting us from all around the country who like this town. And the reason for that is staff, when you get right down to it. So I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. Miranda, what do we not do we not spend some money? Do we not pay part of the sustainability coordinator's
We do.
wage
So we
presently?
match 18,300 and 750. Don't quote me on the end part of that. But 18,000 and some change is what we contribute. But when I say that, so there's $15,000 in a zero waste fund that drops all the way into the sustainability coordinator. So it doesn't allow any money for this incredible zero waste team to do anything. They are operating on no budget. So the 15,000 could offset the salary of the sustainability coordinator
Oh, it doesn't.
for upwards to 3 years.
It doesn't presently.
No, it does. So there's 15,000 Boulder County Sustainability Coordinator grant, and then we match 18,000 and some change. So if we went to salaried, the 15,000 still could be applied to that sustainability coordinator's salary because we get 15,000 every year.
The county's 15,000.
Right.
But
What we would contribute would be significantly more
yeah,
if the position were to brought on salary.
but we're not starting from zero.
That's
Yeah.
right, but that's been a desire since I've been with the town. There's been an increase in hours over time. And we tried when we thought about doing the hybrid community planner, sustainability coordinator, very relieved we didn't do that. But you know, that was a thought of like, how can we try to get this position in? Was not the right match. It really is a full-time job. Community planning is a full-time job, so they need to be separate.
Thanks. Any other public comments on this compensation study in the room? Hearing none, I do see a hand, or I did see a hand up earlier.
Barb has her hand up,
Barb.
and Erica would be next.
Okay, Barb, I saw your hand up a while ago. Go ahead.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the town for doing this. I've watched it with Gilpin County and it's been a pretty incredible process. And I feel like we're finally hiring people that just might stick around for a while. So that is awesome. Everyone deserves to earn a living wage and to be able to afford to live here and work here. I was just curious if we could see the amount of people that are underpaid that have been with the town for more than, say, 3 years 5 years, 7 years? Because when you talk about maybe not being able to do this all at one time, I think that you need to focus on the people that are grossly underpaid that have been here long term. The people that have been here for a year are awesome, but maybe they have to wait if you can't do it all at once. You need to recognize the people that have been there for much longer and put them at the top of your list instead of bringing up every position at once. So I would ask, if you cannot do it all at once, please consider the people that have been there the longest and how to compensate them for being as underpaid as they have been for a very long time. Thank you.
Would it be okay if I responded to that? So in looking at the employee compensation, you've got kind of a mixture. I would say of your top 6, 3 out of 6 have been here 4 years, almost 4 years or longer. 1 out of 6 has been here, closer to the 10-year mark. We've got obviously employees who are celebrating the 10-year who are getting to the minimum. So our team kind of is across the board. But yes, to Barb's point, the proposal does increase everyone, whether you've been here 6 months or you've been here 10 years. And that was a tough thing to wrestle with. I struggled with that for a bit, from an equity standpoint, what's the best way to do it? And my feeling was get everyone to their minimum and then let us start to pull people out from there in recognition of their long-term commitment. But yes, some of your long-term employees are looking at that 50-50 split. So again, why that 50-50 split, doing the now and then in January is so important, because I wouldn't want someone who's been here for 8, 9 years to get half now and then not get that other half in January. And so we can, I'm just gonna throw it out there, we can bring this back as everyone gets their full minimum under a supplemental. You can do it. We're not opposed to it. We're trying to be really mindful of the budget, but yes, that is, that top 6 is a tough group, but you're also looking at the largest gaps, in some cases $40,000 between what someone should make and what they do make.
And that seems tragic to me, Miranda. I think those people should be taken care of first.
On the other hand, our town budget is at $4 million, has kind of been stuck at $4 million. This is a big, big lift. And so we can do so much, and it's a stretch as it is.
Right. So where the 50-50 split came in was for us to rework the figures for the 2024 budget to, again, I'm asking you to approve it, but it's up to me and Rita to make sure it happens, that we can get it into the budget. But this would allow us to do that work to finish getting everyone to their minimum, especially that top 6, getting those individuals to their minimum under kind of a half now, half in 6 months from now. Erica had her hand up next.
Go ahead, Erica.
Thank you. So my name is Erica Thorley. I live at 82 Frontier Lane in Nederland. And I wanted to speak today to second what Barb just shared, also Miranda and Larry. This is really important for attention, and I would agree with Miranda that our biggest asset as a town is our staff, maybe second to our beautiful natural environment and our natural resources. So I do think that that's a really valuable investment versus having money sitting in a bank. That really speaks to me, and I think to our community. The second piece of that is I wanted to speak to the value of a sustainability coordinator. So many of you already know, I started with the Sustainability Advisory Board in 2017 with our 100% renewable energy commitment for the town, and had worked on similar initiatives since then up until recently. I also was one of the folks on the board that helped write the sustainability matching grant for the coordinator position in 2020, and again in 2021 and in 2022, and the current contract today. This position was identified over 10 years ago as a key position for Nederland staff. Not only is it important as far as many of the initiatives that a sustainability coordinator looks at, it's also important for preserving our air quality, our water quality, our natural resources, climate change, resiliency, adaptation, renewable energy. The list goes on and on and on. For sustainability to be successful, it needs to be integrated into all things. So this position, I feel, is key to the success of Nederland and our future. It is investing in our future. The position has grown, as Miranda shared. It started off as 10 hours per week. We were able to hire someone that was already working on similar initiatives in nearby Lyons, and as well as a grad student. And then it grew to 25 hours per week, which is where it's at now. That's a success. But I strongly feel that until this position is integrated into town staff and has a livable wage, we're not going to see the true benefits of a sustainability coordinator. I'm happy to, to talk about this further with anyone if there are further questions, but really the goal has been since, I believe, 2012 to hire a full-time sustainability expert for the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Anyone else online have any comments on this conversation? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for further discussion. And there were a couple questions for us too.
I did have a real quick question for Erica, Mayor Billy, if I might.
Oh yeah, for sure, Erica. If you're still there.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? I'm being told my network connection's poor.
You sound good.
Okay, good. Well, speaking of which, speaking of poor, one question that I have is with this zero carbon footprint sustainability model that we're driving toward, has there been any budget modeling with regard to what this could possibly save the town in energy costs or those sorts of things that we can maybe chalk into a budget line item or scratch off a budget line item somewhere? Is there any work done for savings, cost savings in this regard?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I'd like to bring in Leah Haney if there has been some work done on this in the last 7 months or so since I've left working with the town. From my experience, we don't necessarily have great renewable energy options at the community level, and that's where community choice aggregation or community choice energy comes in, and that's kind of at the legislative level with the state. Outside of that, we're kind of stuck with rooftop solar, microgrids, potentially backup batteries for resiliency, and then we're stuck with what's an option from our utility, which is Xcel and United Power. I just recently spoke with Boulder County. The cost of electrifying buildings is tremendous. I think the expected cost is about $5 billion for the current housing stock in Boulder County. So that's its own kind of can of worms. I think there is some financial savings opportunities, but right now the options we have are limited outside of really individual rooftop renewable energy installs. Leah, you want to step in?
Sure. Thanks, Erica. Yeah, we haven't done any formal study on the cost savings for energy or even greenhouse gases. That we're kind of behind on that too. But in exploring other community solar programs right now, there are some commercial programs available, and that's more of a 2 to 3 year project. But we could see some savings there that we could track over time as well. And if this position were full-time, we could go after more funding that is being directed towards municipality renewable energy upgrades like electrification and rooftop solar. Any questions?
Yeah. Great. No, thank you. That answers those. Good to see you again, Leah.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Thank you, Erica.
Any other questions for Nicole? Go ahead.
Forgive everyone my congestion. I've got a manly voice tonight, but I think what I just say as a part of this discussion is that I'll just borrow the words that Barb had mentioned earlier, that this is just a travesty or atrocious. I forget the words, and none of this data is a surprise as someone who's worked in HR for the past 10 years. This is exactly where I think that many of us had seen or expected the salary data to end up. So I'm in full favor of doing the supplemental budget to get folks at least 50% of the way, for the folks that are above that threshold, getting them the 50% now, getting the rest of the folks up to their minimum, and then making sure January 2024 the rest of that minimum threshold is achieved. That is something that I'd like to see. I'd also like to see the sustainability coordinator implemented as a full-time position. For me, this is about, as Erica had mentioned, this is about an investment. And as Miranda had mentioned earlier, there are a set of goals that we are going to push through or that we're going to present to the public. And one of the requests has been that every single one of those goals has a sustainability and a public engagement filter to them. So in order to achieve that, I do see that we will need a full-time sustainability coordinator on staff and to be able to help drive the lens and the goals that we have that we're outlining. So that's where I stand.
Thanks, Nicole. Other trustees?
Yeah, I'd like to also chime in and say that I can't underscore the impression that Miranda in particular has made on me in her diligence and hard work in trying to foster a culture that is in and of itself a sustainability, a notable sustainability hallmark of a good workforce. So I respect very much the effort that's put into driving this, and I also respect very much the depth of knowledge and caring that goes into this. A couple of points that I want to touch upon leading into that is that I guess big picture wise, I think we can also do a good job of maintaining a sustainability approach with regard to town budget and income wise. I guess my couple questions for you, Miranda and Rita, are have we been able to sort of containerize the budget loss that could be incurred by the bank leaving as well as Ned's to sort of have a little bit of a heads up with what we have to maybe make up for in shortfall with regard to that income. And the other thing is my question for Miranda is, I know that you're always working on grants, and I know that you've probably got some things in the works that we don't even know about right now. But are there any concerns with those drying up in the event of a recession? So in the spirit of those, I also want to really encourage all of us as a team to try to keep working toward ways to generate future revenue in a sustainable way. For example, pump tracks and bringing business in. The Ned Gravel is an incredible event, and we can just also bring in some revenue from that with other types of revenue generating streams or side businesses or food carts or those sorts of things. That's something to maybe keep front of mind. But
Well, I think that was identified as one of the main goals for the next 18 months is revenue generation.
Yeah, definitely. But I want to also encourage a little bit more of an open-mindedness with existing, proposals that are on the table, as well as, us identifying that as a goal. So we can keep those conversations going.
So I think to answer your question, Trustee Munn, we're always we kind of are 2 months behind when it comes to receiving our sales tax. So hard to really say what's the impact of some of the recent business losses right here, right now. Just a reminder though, compensation study is coming, and a lot of that was going to be on kind of looking at economic development, specifically the central business district, ways in which we can encourage business development. And so that is something that would happen, of course, over this 18 months, is what can we do to really look at that downtown corridor and how can we focus some efforts on that. And I think that's a part of that kind of stabilization conversation is you also have the comprehensive plan over the next 18 months. So let that that unfold, let that also guide, bring in some market experts who can maybe help us understand what businesses will survive here, what businesses should thrive, what should we consider encouraging. Nederland, unlike other communities really do an active effort to encourage your business to operate here. Nederland, we just don't do that. And so I think there is an opportunity for economic development and bringing in subject matter experts who specialize in that to help guide that conversation. And in terms of grants, the IIJA, the bipartisan infrastructure, that's going to be the biggest one that I think we're interested in. But just so through the Denver Regional Council of Governments, there is a case manager of sorts who helps us understand what we need to secure funding for. Obviously, step one is to finalize our goals. So if we know that there's specific water infrastructure, they'll then tell us, hey, here are the grants you should go for. However, DOLA is also working to contribute the match funding for IIJA grants and recognizing that these are typically multi-million-dollar projects that we don't have the match for. And so a lot of opportunities, but that was kind of our commitment as department heads, is if we're looking at, say, sidewalk grants, that we also recognize that the grant funding is going to be the way to go, and then maybe through a CIP project or DOLA funding, we can secure the match. And so it doesn't change that commitment, but we wouldn't be budgeting for it as CIP projects. We would be continuing to scour grants. I'm not expecting that IIJA funding to go away. If anything, we need to be aggressive in the way we approach it, and our Dr. Cog representative is evaluating what might be the right fit for Nederland.
So,
Miranda?
Thanks, Miranda.
Miranda, do we still have that grant writer on staff?
Not really. So she had a lot of personal stuff going on. And so all your recent grants have been written by yours truly as department heads. That is something, right? Thank you. I mean, they've done an incredible job. And
which means we've saved money as well.
exactly. And so I think that, when we brought on the grants writer, it was maybe recognizing that one of our strongest grant writers, Chris Pelletier, had left. And that was a new skill for a lot of the team that's here, but they've done an incredible job in securing funding. And so we'll just continue to do that. And knowing that Jen Waltz, our grant writer, is available for more like consulting, but less available for actual writing of the grant. But I think we just heard our first no. We did not get the grant funding to redo the NEDPED sidewalks. We have a call this Friday to find out why, but that is our first no in quite a while, especially knowing that we've written all the grants ourselves.
Was that a CDOT grant?
That was that CDOT grant, yeah. The Transportation Alternatives Program. We'll find out Friday exactly why, but we didn't score poorly. We just didn't score high enough and it was a very small pool of money that we were competing for. So we have a great grant application. We just will need to apply it somewhere else.
Well,
Again,
one question based on John Mountain's question. You said some communities encourage businesses to be active in their community.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. What would be some of the actions that other businesses do?
So a lot of communities have economic development departments or personnel who go out there and kind of solicit your business. They go out there and they say, this is perfect for Nederland. And so it may not be a chain, but you may be looking at, of someone operating in Lyons who might want a second store here. And you just do that. You create those networking opportunities to encourage someone to come, but obviously that's usually kind of a give and take. If you're asking someone to come, you might be waiving certain permitting fees or other things to encourage and incentivize them to want to operate in Nederland. And it is my understanding that's just never been our history, but it's a great opportunity for us to look at, especially under the compensation or the comprehensive plan, is how can we be more engaged in economic development and take a more central role versus just hoping businesses come and operate here and hoping that they're successful. I think we have a responsibility in partnership with the DDA and the Chamber of Commerce to really work on economic development.
I was just going to ask about the chamber, whether that's a partnership we develop in that direction.
Newly formed, have their leadership structure in place, and I think there's a lot of great work they're doing in ways that we can intersect. And I think that's something that is a missed, maybe in my opinion, a bit of a missed opportunity, is really taking a deeper dive into economic development. And I think that is the point of your comprehensive plan. I keep wanting to say compensation study. Your comprehensive plan is, especially when you're looking at that downtown corridor, that was kind of a big push in this study, is you need to look at economic development.
It's exactly why we wrote in some of the consultants, the market consultants, for that exact reason.
And they would evaluate what types of businesses, again, would thrive and be successful, because not every business coming up here is going to be successful. So making sure that if we're going to take that active effort in attracting someone or encouraging them to operate, that we also have market research of why they would be a successful business here in Nederland.
Exactly. Yep.
Would
Are
it
we
be possible
talking
to,
a little bit?
sorry, go ahead, Tom.
It seems like we're getting off topic. I think this is a longer discussion, but that's not the topic we're discussing right now. I think
Sure.
I'm pretty satisfied that we're understanding how important it is to keep our budget balanced, to be able to pay not only the salary increase in the next, but I'd ask that we bring the discussion back to where we are right now.
Yeah, I did want to address the 50-50 split and those top 6 versus the rest. And I think it's just worth, I mean, I think that your plan is good. I think the 50-50 split plan is good. There are maybe a couple of people who have been here a long time who are going to be part of the 50-50. But it's worth noting that everyone getting the 50-50 split, except for one person, is getting a larger increase than all the folks who aren't getting the 50-50 or are getting it right now. So that's worth noting. It's also worth noting that in order to increase everybody, those top 6 would be $145,000 per year. To increase everybody else is only 60. Right? So we are still putting heavy investment into those top 6 here with the 50-50 split right now, right? We're not, I don't think they're getting, I mean, they've been getting, shortchanged for a while, but in terms of the amount of the increase relative to the budget that we're looking at here, I think that this makes sense. And it's only the town clerk who's getting less than somebody else who would get the immediate increase this year. So I think I'm fairly comfortable with the way that they've devised this. And I think it is equitable in terms of, just looking at sheer numbers of what it costs to live in a place, right? Even maybe putting aside the question of the job title and description for a second, right? When we look at the actual numbers of the money that people would be getting, I think this is probably the most equitable way to go about it. Though I do hear what Barb is saying, and I think Barb is correct. But I think that that's been accounted for in this plan.
Yeah, maybe I can add, as hard as this was, my comment to the department heads was like, you have to take the person out of it. Like, we know how incredible every single individual person is and what they each do and how long they've been here and how hard they work. But in order to try to be as fair as we can in approaching this, again, taking the person out, but then the range allows us to bring the person back in and then start to play out. Where should they fall because of their time with town, because of their performance, because of, the certs that they acquire. But getting to the minimum is step 1, as Jenny noted, that's step 1 in this process. And then we have pretty healthy ranges to start to move people appropriately through them.
When I moved to Nederland the second time, 4 years ago, one of the first guys that stopped by to say hi was our then mayor, Chris Larson, and he brought me a beer and said, welcome. And I said, what's the most important thing you've done as mayor? And he said at the time, bringing salaries up to a livable wage. And I think I'm just shocked at how far we got off track over time. But then I'm shocked also every time I go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
So I think we're making a step towards equity. I think we've got a plan for getting there. I'm really proud of us being able to do this, and I'm really proud of you guys, all of you, for what you've done. It's just look where we were a year ago, and look where we are now. And so this is a big reach. But it's also a big vote of confidence. And I want to thank each of you for how you stepped up to the plate in a year. It's just been truly astounding. And then for many years, Nikki. And thank you for saving our bacon and keeping this team together and putting together some choices that might have not have been intuitively obvious. Britt, that was a brilliant, turned out to be a brilliant move. So I'm just really happy with where it's going and proud to be part of this team. I think we saw that sitting in this room 2 Fridays ago. I think we're in alignment in a way we just haven't been for a long, long time. So thanks to all of you. Much appreciated for the work you've done.
Very well said, Tom. And I do think that it is worth pointing out that, a living wage is one thing, but a competitive wage, right, is another. And to be moving in that direction, I think is really healthy and positive for the
We're
town.
trying to get to base camp.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Eric, is that, yeah, those are two completely different things. Thank you for saying that.
Jesse, what are you thinking?
I'm in support of this proposal and the request, and I want to just note that as an employer in Nederland and an employer of what I consider to be a pretty highly specialized talent, similar to our town staff, finding and keeping good people is by far the most valuable part of running a business or any organization successfully in town. And yeah, I couldn't agree more that our people is our biggest investment, our biggest opportunity, our biggest value. And from there, all wealth, comes from that foundation. And I want to say big thanks to the town staff for coming tonight and sitting and supporting Miranda in the ask. And I know that you all have her back and vice versa. And it's just really great to see and to be a part of it as a BOT member. I feel it's it's just a really positive time right now, and I really thank you all for doing all the hard work that you're doing day in and day out, and the care and dedication that you provide to the town. And I really feel that the best work comes from something that money can't buy, and that it's however lack of money can ruin it. So if people are feeling that they're unfairly compensated, or if it's something that's in the back of anyone's mind that they're not really
Just me, or did I lose
There
you?
you go. You're back. Oh, shoot. Jesse, if you can hear me, you're breaking up for some reason. I'll go ahead and talk for the moment. Just why not? So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate all of you being here, and I want to also thank you for working on this project, and thank employee council, and then thank you all for seeing, or choosing, working together, as I heard it, to give your, the folks that work with you and for you their full. I don't think you can hear us, or yeah. No. But having the kind of the vision, I think, to give the folks that work with you and for you their full, or suggest giving them their full pay increase while you are willing to break yours up for your top 6. So that gives us options. I don't know exactly. Yeah, that gives us options. I mean, the other option is to give everyone that money too, but I appreciate that as a big gesture. So thanks. Thanks for being here. Yeah. Well,
Can we mute Jesse? I know he's doing a great speech.
Jesse, can you hear us? For some reason, you're okay. Well, thanks. I might text Angie. So, but I think.
Well, I think
Tanya and John, just to do a sound check out there. Can you say something? Because maybe it's more than just Jesse. Actually, we heard Nicole. So, Tanya and John, do you have anything? I'd like to just get us moving on these questions. If we have any more questions for staff.
I fully echo Nicole's sentiments personally. I'm 100% behind this. So this is an easy sell for me.
Okay, thank you, Tanya.
Same.
Great. So I don't think we have any more questions for you, Jen. Thank you for your work I think it's Janet. I'm spacing Olson. Yes. Thank you. So we just want to talk about approving the recommendation for increasing the salary of any employee to their minimum salary now. If the gap is less than 10,000, we'll do the increase now, and doing a 50-50 split for those who have a gap of more than 10,000. So do we approve that recommendation or have another one?
Yeah, I'd like to see this plan come back in a supplemental budget, ASAP.
So we do have to do we would love to bring it back next week, but we have to do a public noticing for the supplemental budget. But what is in the packet is what will come back to you.
Great. So for August 1st.
Correct.
Okay. I think we're good. Do you need nods?
A nod of 4 is nice, but I feel like I already got it. But
I think
wanna
we're
make it
nodding.
official.
Jesse's probably nodding out there and
He's asked me to put him on speaker, so he's going to call in by phone. I'll ring him right back.
I
There we
just
go.
want to give an opportunity. I mean, again, the department have sat here for an hour and a half just championing me. I'd like to think if they want to say anything, I'd love to throw it out there to them. No pressure.
Just one sec,
As
Jesse.
you know, I can talk the whole time. So
This is Nikki Dunn, Parks Manager for the town of Nederland. I just wanted to say thank you for recognizing your staff and our staffs. When Mayor Larson spoke of trying to get us all to a livable wage, it took a couple of years for that to happen. And that was just to bring us up to a $40,000 a year mark. So this is actually quite a large recognition toward all of us that are here today and that and all the guys and gals who have our backs. So thank you. Appreciated.
Wait, I have a question for Nikki.
Thanks, Nikki. Well, go ahead.
Was 40,000 livable even back then?
No, I mean, it was better than not 40,000.
Okay.
When I started for the town, they were paying me $14 an hour. So to get me to the $18 an hour mark was a pretty big deal. But it did, like I said, it took a couple of years. It wasn't instant.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I mean, it's just also a testament to the work y'all have done that it makes it such an easy decision to make here, right?
Yes. Sorry, Rose.
Just a second one. Nikki said, I really appreciate your support. Our team works our butts off. We've got a lot of work, a lot of responsibility, and our team really appreciates the board's support in this and many other ways. Thank you.
Andrew, we were part. This was good.
All right, so yeah, I'll go ahead and just second what both Nikki and Andrew said. I think that it's not only just a step towards fairness to all the town staff, but there's also just a huge step towards the sustainability that we have for all the town services that we have to get people that want to stay and work here in a town that I think that everyone, at least here, and of course, all of the town staff that aren't here today that love this town, I think it's huge that they want to stay here and work here. So, I mean, I speak for everyone. I think that we appreciate this.
Thanks, Mark. That'd be Oh, that would be done. Sorry. Wait. And then read it. Okay.
Hey, if I could just pick up where I left off, if y'all don't mind.
Yeah, Don, speak. We're going to go around and hear from. Sorry, Jesse. We're going to hear from staff real quick, and then yes, we will definitely.
I just agree with all my coworkers, and I also wanted to say to Eric's point, we met as department heads individually and then as a group, and we were all in agreement. So the individuals that just need to get up to the minimum, as a whole, we're in full support of. We were all okay with their wages. Because of the compensation study and the data that was gathered, we understand our roles, where we work, and the value of each position. I don't expect to make what Rita makes or what Miranda makes. So as a department head, I'm in full support of all of the other proposals in this study. So I just wanted the board to know that there's unity here. So that's all. I appreciate the recognition of the one, group versus the one group of numbers versus the other. But I also wanted to say that I really appreciate what everyone does here. So thank you all for supporting that as well. Thanks.
Yeah, and that's I think, such a great reason for us to support this proposal, right? Is because it comes from a place of unity, from the place of camaraderie, sometimes even a place of sacrifice, right? Financial sacrifice. And I think that that's really an amazing thing to see. So I'm not gonna go against that, not in a million years.
Any other comments from folks?
And of course, I appreciate the board's support very much as well.
We
Miranda?
appreciate you, Rita.
Thanks, Rita. Okay.
I would love to turn it back over to Trustee Severs, but I agree. I do appreciate, doing this work. There was a lot of, what's the board going to think? What's the board going to say? And I also really value the relationship I have with each one of you and talking through this with many of you. I think you all know that my number one philosophy has always been staff. It's been the staff, it's been the culture, it's been working on this. We've had to make some tough calls and some tough choices and think outside the box, but I'm so proud of where we are today. And I'm so proud of this culture that we've built that, to me, people want to come work for town because they love what we've built here. And I'm just really thankful to be a part of that and excited about having this compensation just be the next step of us truly being the employer of choice here in Nederland.
Thanks, Miranda. Jesse, thanks for being patient.
Jesse, you're muted.
I was just asking, I don't know what the last thing you guys heard was, or if anything.
Well, you talked about initially about being an employer and the value of a stable team, and well, we were talking about. Oh well, really, after we kind of lost you, we each really talked to the staff, and then we also talked about the questions and really said we were ready to move ahead with this recommendation for the pay increases, and then we had then the staff folks shared with us.
Right. So I'm just, I guess, to give you guys the short version, I'm in support of the increases, and I'm very grateful to the town staff for all your hard work, and I'm proud to support this increase, and I really appreciate you all working every day and putting as much time and service into this, making this a great town to live in every day. So that's all.
Thanks, Jesse. Randy, anything else?
Nope, we'll come back to you with a supplemental. And thanks to all the department heads for being here.
Thanks,
Thank you to
everyone.
each and every one of you.
We'll take a 5-minute break, I think, and then we'll come right back to 6.2. So 8:42, everyone. Okay, I'd like to move into, sorry, I got confused. Discussion item 6.2 on the reconsideration of rezoning ordinance. Jennifer?
Good evening, Jennifer Madsen, Town Attorney. So we were last here, I was here, I think it was Macy, before the Board of Trustees related to this ordinance 837 and the referendum petition that was submitted on that ordinance. That was the beginning of June that the Board of Trustees heard about the last action on this. At that meeting, the Board of Trustees appointed Karen Goldman to serve as a hearing officer. If any protests were filed, a protest was filed on the referendum petition. Ms. Goldman held a hearing on June 20th and issued her decision on June 25th. Ms. Goldman did uphold the sufficiency of the referendum petition. So since this agenda item was put in the packet, the town has received notice that Mr. Mitchell filed an action with the Boulder County District Court to review Karen Goldman's findings related to the protest and Ms. Goldman's findings that the referendum petition was sufficient. And I do want to state that Mr. Mitchell does have a right under Colorado law to request the review with the district court. So we're at a little bit of a different position than as was stated in the AIM because of that district court filing. So the purpose of the AIM was related to reconsideration of ordinance 837. And does the Board of Trustees want to repeal the ordinance or send it to a vote? I want to put a third option on the table, and that is, does the Board of Trustees wish to hold the reconsideration of that ordinance 837 until such time as the district court judge issues a decision on the petition sufficiency? And the reason for holding it is that it's possible that the district court judge could decide that the petition is not sufficient. And so all of your work and reaching a decision would be for naught. And town resources, if you decide to go to an election, that would also be for naught. So that is a third option on in front of you this evening is, do you want to put a hold on this reconsideration?
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for Jennifer?
Is there any reason we wouldn't put a hold on it? Or is there any downside to that?
I don't see any downside. Right now, the ordinance 837 is not in effect, so the rezoning hasn't occurred because of the fact that the referendum petition was filed.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems the only downside would be if the district court took a very, very long time and we ended up being outside of the 120-day window that we have to start the process of there being an election or reconsideration. So it seems like if we could get a stay from the judge so that that timeline were paused while the district court makes that decision, that'd be the kind of best solution.
Yeah, and that is an option, is to Mr. Mitchell's counsel can request a stay. I could also request a stay just so we can have a court order to solidify really holding everything in place for the time being.
So the stay would stop the clock, if you will, so that the October, having an election, if that was where it evolved to, the October 6th, I think is the present deadline. But with this, not knowing how the district court is doing with their schedule, with this, we're not, that date just, everything stops and then the clock starts again after the court makes a decision.
Right. Well, So the question before you tonight is do you want to put a hold on it on your end and then?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to find out, like, I mean, you know, we may do that, but like Eric just said, you know, time will go on and we can't control what the district court does. So that's where I was just saying, if there is a stay, if there is a stay that the court puts on us or whatever, however you say it, then that clock stops on like a potential
Right.
election or on the reconsideration.
Yes. So the clock in terms of getting to an election is final determination of petition sufficiency. And so what the request would be for the court is to say that the judge's decision is in fact the final determination of petition sufficiency. And so the clock doesn't run until we get a decision from the judge.
Right. And then and then, okay, that's what that means. So if then the clock starts again.
Yes.
Okay.
Then if the judge says the petition is sufficient, then we're back before you. And that's when you have to reconsider and make a decision on the ordinance 837.
Makes sense. And if the judge sees it's not sufficient, then this ordinance stands.
Yes, that's correct.
The rezone
Yes.
stands. Okay. Any more clarifying questions for Attorney Madsen from the trustees? If not, we'll go ahead and go to public comment. Anyone no one in the room has public comment? Thanks, Kayla. Does anyone online have a public comment? If not, we will go ahead and bring it back to the board for discussion.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with basically pausing this process on our end, but not indefinitely, right? Like if there is no stay and we get to the point where we might become out of compliance with state statute regarding when we are obligated to reconsider the ordinance, then I think we should, reverse course and reconsider it. But for now, I think it's fine to wait.
Thanks, Eric. What do other trustees think?
I'm in agreement. I'd also like to hit pause on our end. So
I agree with Eric.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Jesse. John, Tanya. Tom.
I'm in agreement.
I'm in agreement too. Yeah, that we put a pause and then if there is no stake, keep an eye on the progress with the district court.
Yeah, I'm in agreement as well.
If needed. As needed. Thanks, John. Tanya, any last comments?
I think that's a good move, just to wait and get the stay.
Okay, great. Does that give you what you need?
It does. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Deal.
Appreciate it. With that, we will move into our action items. We have Alex with us this evening from the county, right? And we're going to talk about the Nederland Eco Pass Public Improvement District tax extensions. Go ahead, Alex. Alex Hadwright. I'm sorry, a proper intro. Alex Hadwright, our regional multimodal planning division manager with Boulder County. So thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? As said, Alex Hadwright, Regional Multimodal Planning Division Manager from Boulder County, here to present on the Nederland Eco Pass Public Improvement District and a potential 2023 ballot measure to extend the tax that funds the Eco Pass program. Excuse me. So I also, in my role at the county, the program manager for the Nederland EcoPass Public Improvement District, and then also the staff liaison for the advisory committee that advises the county on the same. Next slide. So for a quick agenda, do a brief recap of EcoPass programs, cover the 2013 EcoPass ballot measure, the district and our advisory committee, go over the EcoPass utilization and ridership on the NB bus, projected finances over the next 10 years, results from the surveys that we just completed in June of this year, and then the 2023 ballot measure. Next slide. So the RTD EcoPass program is a bulk pass program offered by RTD. They offer two different types. One is a neighborhood based on where you live. The other is a business based on where you work. So the Nederland program is a neighborhood EcoPass program based on residency. So EcoPass operates on an insurance model, so you can't opt in or out. An EcoPass must be purchased for everyone in the group. And in this case of the Nederland EcoPass district, all residents of the district. Slide. So the 2013 ballot measure passed with about 54% approval. This established the Nederland EcoPass Public Improvement District. The district, for that district, we use the same boundaries as the library district. So generally properties within Boulder County that are located within 5 miles of the Nederland Town Hall. And this ballot measure authorized a 1.85 mils property tax for 10 years, running from 2014 to 2023. And that funds an EcoPass for all permanent residents of the district, and stipulating that any remaining funds after the EcoPass program is paid for could be used for additional bus service, bus stop, or sidewalk improvements. And the Boulder County Commissioners serve as the board of directors for the Public Improvement District. Slide. So this is just a quick map of the district, so showing that the district boundaries are much larger than just the town, but includes all of the town of Nederland and then a lot of the surrounding area as well. Next slide. So a quick example of the property tax bill that funds the EcoPass program. So on the residential side, for every $100,000 in residential value, it's a little over $1,250. So for a $500,000 home, the EcoPass property tax bill per year amounts to a little over $62. And then on the non-residential commercial side, for every $100,000 in commercial value, that's an annual tax of a little over $51. So for a $500,000 commercial property, annual EcoPass property tax bill is a little over $258. Slide. So our advisory committee is the Nederland EcoPass Public Improvement District Advisory Committee, more affectionately known as NEPIDAC. This advises the county commissioners and staff on the administration and implementation of the district and the program. Currently, there's 5 members on the committee. So 1 representative from this town board that's selected from among yourselves, and then 4 at-large representatives that are appointed by the county commissioners. And the at-large representatives must be residents of the district. Next slide. So the Nederland EcoPass program is provided to all residents of the district, homeowners and renters. Currently, we have around 1,900 EcoPasses in circulation. An EcoPass provides for unlimited rides on all RTD bus and rail services. And then the district, through the county, contracts with the town of Nederland to administer the program. So the printing and issuing and deactivating of EcoPasses. Currently, RTD has 3 categories of EcoPass: one full fare, mainly for adults, another senior or individuals with disabilities and Medicare recipients, and then a 3rd category of EcoPass for youth. And then when residents move out of the district, their EcoPasses are deactivated, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that in a minute. Next slide. All right. So how does the district verify eligibility? So to receive an EcoPass, you have to show that you are a resident of the district. So for homeowners, this is done through a combination of county assessor records and town utility accounts. And then renters must show a copy of a valid lease. And then when someone moves away, home sales are tracked through county assessor records and town utility accounts. So when a home sells, an EcoPass registered at that address is deactivated, and then renters have to show their new lease every year. And if not, their passes are suspended, and then after a grace period, deactivated if they don't come to town and show proof of a new lease. Next slide. So for a quick overview of our utilization. So pre-COVID in 2018, we had 114,000 boardings per year from the program. At the height of COVID in 2020, we were down 70%. We'll say ridership has recovered quite a bit since then. I don't have exact numbers since COVID, but the breakdown between the full fare, senior discount, and youth discount shows that the vast majority of our boardings occur by EcoPass holders that have the full fare or adult. And then you can see out of the roughly 35,000 or so in 2020, we had a little over 5,000 from senior riders and then a little under 1,000 from youth riders. Next slide. And then this slide shows the breakdown of the different routes that those pass holders rode. So you can see for all three categories, the NB is about 30 to 40%. Then there's another 40% of boardings that occur on the Boulder local routes, and then another 5 to 10% on the Flatiron Flyer, and then the remainder on the Skyride, the Bolt to Longmont, and then various Denver local routes. Next slide. So looking at NB ridership, so this is not a perfect correlation with the Nederland EcoPass utilization, but about a third of the NB ridership comes from EcoPass holders, and then as we saw on the previous slide, about a third or 30 to 40% of EcoPass taps are on the NB, so they're a pretty good, pretty well correlated. So you can see we had relatively steady ridership for around a decade leading up to 2020, and then a very large decrease in April 2020, and then a kind of slow and steady recovery of ridership since then. And right now we're back at around 80% of pre-COVID ridership on the NB. Next slide. So next, provide a couple different scenarios of projected district finances. And so one thing to note is these are assuming either 2% or 3% future annual property tax revenue growth. Over the past 10 years of the district, we've averaged 7%. So these are very conservative estimates and want to show the sensitivity to what happens with future property tax revenue. And then the first couple scenarios do not include the potential addition of extending the EcoPass program to non-resident employees. So this is just the residents of the district. And then I will show a couple scenarios that do include adding folks who work in the district but do not live in the district. So this scenario is showing the 2% annual future property tax revenue growth, showing that for several years we continue to add to our fund balance, but then our fund balance starts decreasing in the out years, but we still would go through the next 10 years through 2033 with a fund balance in excess of $100,000. Next slide. So this next slide shows, so this slide shows the adjustment if the future annual property tax revenue growth is 3% per year instead of 2%. So you can see over 10 years, we barely start dipping into the fund balance in 2032. And so the fund balance would increase for most of the next 10 years, and we would end 2033 with around $200,000 in fund balance. Next slide. So these next scenarios show.
Sorry, just on the previous slide.
Yep.
If we could clarify, does that include potentially charging fees? Or is this just with the 1.85 mils?
The two scenarios we've looked at is just from the property tax revenue, so it
Great,
does
thank
not
you.
include covering fees. All right. Next slide. Yes, this one. So this includes adding the non-resident employees to the program. And so this is back at the 2% annual future property tax revenue growth. You can see here we'd be dipping into our fund balance in every year, and in around 2030 would head into the red. And so obviously not a financially viable scenario. Next slide. However, if our property tax revenue goes up by 3% per year instead of 2% per year, you can see that fund balance curve is much closer to ending the next decade in the black. And then next slide. If we have a 3% annual property tax revenue growth and then assume $10,000 revenue in fees from charging employees for their EcoPass, then we would end with a positive fund balance after the next decade. And then want to reiterate that over the previous 10 years, we've averaged 7% annual growth. And so from the previous slides, you can see there's a pretty big change in the trajectory of the fund balance just from a 2% annual future growth to 3%. And so if the next 10 years are anything like the previous 10 years, that fund balance curve is going to be quite a bit higher than what's shown on these slides.
And could I ask if that 10K, sorry, if that 10K, if there was a particular number that was based on in terms of an individual fee annually?
It's That's a microeconomics question based on if we were to set a fee, for a particular fee, a certain number of employees would likely purchase the program. And it's difficult to say if we charged a higher fee, would that result in more revenue? Or if we charged a lower fee, would that result in so many more people signing up that we'd increase the revenue? Obviously, aside from financial goals, it would be advantageous to have more people participating in the program because of the benefits of transit ridership. From a strictly financial perspective, we don't know if it would result in more money to charge a relatively higher or lower fee.
Got it.
I went through Andrew and I sit on this board, so we went through this, a couple points on, first of all, this is a use-based program. And this year we have 2 months where they're not even checking our eco passes. So that's going to bring things down. Alex hasn't gotten into it yet, but RTD next year is going to drop the fare from a regional fare to a local fare, which will also positively impact us.
So just a couple points of clarification. So the future expenses do take into account the lower fares that RTD is going to adopt starting in January, but they do not take into account any refunds we'd be getting from the Zero Fare for Better Air, the summer campaign that's funded by the state. And so in 2022, we had a 1-month rebate for the annual program because the state funded it for August. And then in 2023, we're going to have a 2-month rebate because the state is funding fare free on RTD for July and August of this year. Next slide. So a potential 2023 ballot measure. So the existing property tax that funds the program expires at the end of this year. So to continue the program, in order to continue the program, another successful ballot measure would be necessary. On April 26, NEPADAC, our advisory committee, recommended to place a ballot measure on the November 2023 ballot with details to be determined. And then we conducted several surveys over the month of June, polling both residents and employees, and then also business owners, and then came back to NEPADAC at the end of June with a more specific recommendation that we'll show in a couple slides. So next slide. Yes, so that's the June 29th meeting. And so at the June 29th meeting, NEPADAC recommended to place a 10-year extension of the existing 1.85 mils property tax on the November ballot, and also giving the district the option to create a non-resident employee program and to charge fees. And want to say that both county staff and the NEPADAC advisory committee, there is no desire to charge residents fees for eco passes. That would be a measure of last resort. Had COVID not happened based on the new fare structure that RTD had adopted in 2018, the district would have been looking at financial insolvency by around 2021. And so as a last resort, we were exploring the legality of charging fees, but since the original ballot language did not address fees, we were unsure of that. And then when the pandemic happened, we never actually got around to answering that question. And so our recognition of the fees for residents is that would be a measure of absolute last resort, and that there is no desire among staff or the advisory committee to charge residents fees. But if the alternative was to terminate the program, that might be basically a card that we'd want to play as a last resort. However, on the employee side, we'll see in a minute from the surveys that there's a much larger appetite for if the fees are necessary to make to extend the EcoPass program to employees financially viable, that there's significantly more appetite for charging a fee in order to enable that program to exist. Next slide. And so as I mentioned, we did 3 surveys. We ran those over most of June. You can see the number of results that we had for each survey. By far and away, received the most responses to our resident survey. Next slide. So for our resident survey, we did outreach in a number of ways. I'd say the 2 primary means of reaching folks were a post on NetHead's Facebook group, as well as the postcard mailing that went out in June. Then a couple results from our websites and redirections from the employee survey. Next slide. So we asked, I'll just provide the quick highlights of the survey. I think the full survey results, I believe, were included in the packet. I'm looking to Miranda to confirm. So one of the questions was, where do you live? And so we had a pretty even split between residents of the district who live in the town versus in the unincorporated portions of the district. Next slide. And then this is the main question. So without increasing taxes, would you support an extension of the existing property tax to continue funding the EcoPass program? You can see very strong support with 85% of responses indicating that they would support an extension at the current rate. Next slide. And then we asked about the term length. So for that extension, what term length would you support? And you can see we're actually fairly evenly split between 10 years and in perpetuity. I would say from the Ned Heads post that went out first, the in perpetuity was pulling higher. And then as the results that were generated by the postcard mailing came in, 10 years became the most popular option. And then you can see again, that roughly 14 or 15% that do not support extending the property tax, and then a small sliver of no opinion, and then a couple percentage points for 15 years and 20 years extension. Next slide. So this is asking if the district, if property tax revenues were not sufficient to cover the program in the future, should the district be permitted to charge a fee for residents? And the hypothetical fee that we asked as part of this question was $50 per year. And so 36% said the district should be permitted to charge a fee, 52% said no, and then 12% had no opinion. Next slide. And then we asked, how important would it be for the district to provide EcoPasses to non-resident employees? And again, this is not an EcoPass program that currently exists. So if you work in the district but live elsewhere, you do not receive an EcoPass through the program as it stands today. And you can see just shy of half said extremely important or very important, followed by somewhat important, and then relatively low numbers of not so important or not at all important. Next slide. This next question was about the district's permission to charge a fee for non-resident employees, and the hypothetical fee amount we included in the question was $200. And you can see much stronger support for permitting the district to charge an annual fee for employee EcoPasses, so 60% in support, and then 24% opposed and 15% no opinion. Next slide. And then we had an open comment question. So this is the word cloud. And then we had, I think, 144 open-ended comments. And then according to the word cloud generator I used, about 70% of those were positive sentiments in support of the EcoPass program. Next slide. And just a couple examples of those. I won't read all of these, but EcoPass is a wonderful benefit. The Nederland EcoPass is one of the reasons we selected Nederland as a home base. A need for more buses, and then property taxes are already too high. Next slide. So for a couple highlights from our employee survey, so we asked folks which business they work for. Obviously didn't get as many responses to the employee survey as we did the resident, but still a good sampling of different businesses within the district. Next slide. So we asked what would be the maximum amount that you'd be willing to pay for an EcoPass. So you can see 31% said nothing. They would only use the EcoPass if there's no charge. 33% said $20. And then relatively low percentages indicating that they would be willing to pay more than $20 per year for the EcoPass. Next slide. We had 14 open-ended comments. Some folks saying they would use the bus more if EcoPass was available, especially in winter. And then others saying that they're traveling along the peak to peak, so that EcoPass is unlikely to impact their commute since there's currently no bus service on the peak to peak. Next slide. And then for our third survey, so we surveyed business owners and employers, asked how helpful would it be to have an EcoPass program to recruit and retain employees for your business. By far and away, 57% said very helpful, 22% somewhat helpful, and then 17% would not be helpful. Next slide. So for a timeline for a potential 2023 ballot measure, in August, the county would need to have a public hearing. That's tentatively would occur on August 17th. That's when the ballot title and referral resolution would be finalized, and then the Fair Campaign Practice Act Here, Campaign Practices Act quiet period would begin, along with the protest period. And then in September, some more deadlines for the county commissioners. And then October would be the deadline for us to withdraw the ballot measure, and then ballots are mailed to voters, and then November 7th, Election Day. Next slide. So with that, staff are requesting that the town board adopt the following motion. So move to recommend that the Boulder County Board of Commissioners, sitting as the board of directors for the Nederland EcoPass Public Improvement District, refer a ballot measure to the voters of the district as part of the November 2023 general election that asks the voters to extend the existing 1.85 mils property tax for a term of 10 years from 2024 through 2033, permits the district to offer an EcoPass program to non-resident employees who work in the district, and permits the district to charge fees to support funding of both the resident and non-resident employee EcoPass programs. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Alex?
I guess the question is for us, this is an action item. It sounds like we're being asked to vote on this. That's what I thought.
Yes, we will be. Yeah.
We're not being told the fee. There's no number.
There is no number. This is about, correct. I mean, this is about putting this on a countywide ballot, right?
Yeah, but you gotta have the fee on there if people are gonna vote. I might vote for $10, but not for $100.
It's the same fee. We're continuing the same fee as last time, right, Alex? Or the same
No.
middle levy, right?
So it's the 1.85 mils, but then it's also permitting the district to charge fees to support funding of both the resident and non-resident employee EcoPass programs, and that's left open-ended on this particular motion.
Yeah, there's a lot to be worked out before it goes to ballot.
Yeah.
So
Sadly, I think that last part of it would
that's the stick and
lose a lot of votes.
I'm opposed to fees in general, but maybe just for non-residents, but that's where I stand at it. Otherwise, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm categorically opposed to resident fees.
Yeah, me too.
In any way, shape, or form.
John and Jesse, these are actually, just so you know, these are clarifying questions. We want some public comment, and then we'll come back. Any clarifying questions for Alex?
I don't have any clarifying questions.
Okay, thanks.
No questions.
I don't either. I guess one real quick question. I cannot remember the mill rate. I used to know that right off the top of my head. But on a hypothetical, let's just say non-existent miracle $100,000 home, would the 1.85 mils equate to an additional 185 a year in taxes? Does that sound right? Or is the
$60 for a $500,000 home per year?
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
$12
Thank you,
per
Justin.
100,000.
Got it. Sorry. Silly question, but I just want to make sure.
Roughly 5.5 times higher for commercial properties per 100,000.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions for Alex? If not, let's go to public comment. Any public comments on the EcoPass ballot measure?
Hi, Alex. I have a question for you. Sustainability Coordinator Leah Haney. Are there any plans to extend bus service, for example, prior to 9:30 a.m. during the week, which seems to maybe reduce our ridership a bit for early meetings or having to work in Boulder? But any plans to adjust the bus schedule at this point?
RTD does not have any immediate plans. So RTD made significant cuts across the district in April 2020 in response to their unprecedented drop in both sales tax revenue and bus ridership. Since then, several of the trips on the NB have been restored. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 more round trips per day that have not been restored. RTD is making progress on their bus driver shortage, but they haven't completely closed their gap and filled all their positions. So at this time, there's not any anticipated timeline for RTD adding any additional service on the NB.
But you can go earlier than 9:30, I'm pretty sure, if I heard you right.
During the week?
My brother gets to work at 7 in Boulder. Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Okay.
the first one leaves Boulder around 6, and I forget when the first one leaves Nederland.
First one leaves here at 6:30.
Okay, maybe it's just not on the Google Maps. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Kayla. Yeah. Perfect.
Kayla Evans, 1250 Eldora Road. I think you're missing an opportunity. It shouldn't be about the people that are being taxed more so that, and most of the people that have the big house, they're not going to use the bus, I would say, a whole lot. It's people that are marginalized that are going to be using it. So instead of talking about it in terms of taxes and the haves giving to the have-nots or whatever, think of it as a donation to the environment. Think about the environmental E to this, that you may not ride the bus, but think of all the other cars that you're helping stay off the road. So if Boulder County could think of a way better than I'm voicing it right now to sell this, I think it would behoove you and it would be a great benefit. It's a wonderful program, but for those people who don't take advantage of it, that would come on board if they looked at it as a donation to the environment or you're cleaning up the air. It's not that you're paying for people to ride the bus that might not have a car or whatever. Are you understanding? You're sort of seeing where I'm going for it. But I think it's your packaging could be more inventive and more creative and reach more people. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kayla. Any other public comments? If not, oh, go ahead. Okay, great. If not, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for a discussion and a motion.
So I'd prefer to remove the resident fees from this motion. Leave the non-resident fees on there, but remove the ability to charge residents fees. I mean, I'd rather revisit it if we were in a situation where the fund balance was so low. I'd rather revisit it and have a higher mill levy so that we can cover it than start charging people fees for something that they're used to getting from town hall without paying any additional money. I think that would be a disaster.
Alex, if the fund went negative, in the unlikely event that it went negative in 2024, does the town face liability to make up that bill?
No, the town doesn't face any liability since the county is the entity that administers the district.
Got it. And you probably can't put a probability on that, but it looks pretty healthy that we're going to make it through at least this next year. And then once again, how long does this? Once this is voted in, how long a period does it last for? It's not just 1 year, is it?
So the EcoPass contract with RTD is signed on an annual basis, and so RTD gives us a price every fall, and that's the price for the next year. But the proposed motion is to support that the county commissioners ask the voters for a 10-year extension of the existing property tax, and 10 years matches what the voters originally authorized back in 2013 for the 10 years that ends in a couple months.
Great. Okay.
Trustees, any other comments or questions?
Can I make a motion then?
I just, yeah, sure. I just have one question. Which is, this is, all right. Yeah, yes.
Okay. I move to recommend that the Boulder County Board of Commissioners sitting as the Board of Directors for the Nederland EcoPass Public Improvement District refer a ballot measure to the voters of the district as part of the November 2023 general election that asks the voters to extend the existing 1.85 mils property tax for a period of 10 years from 2023 or 2024 to 2033, permits the district to offer an Eco Pass program to non-resident employees in the district, and permits the district to charge fees for supporting non-resident employee Eco Pass programs.
A second.
Miranda, we have a motion and a second. Real quick, any more discussion on this? Basically, Tom proposed the proposed motion and just to be clear, left out the last part about permitting the district to charge fees to support funding to charge residents fees. So we just deleted that. So I just want everyone to know that. Go ahead, Miranda.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon.
Motion passes. Thanks, everyone.
Do you have a bus
Thanks,
to
Alex.
catch, Alex?
No, I had to drive due to the bus schedule this evening.
He's gonna go sleep in the woods and catch 6:30.
Thanks, Alex.
Do you want to thank
you.
Alex for coming in person? Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks so much, Alex. Good to meet you versus seeing you on the computer. Thanks a bunch. Well, so with that, we'll move right into our next action item, 7.2, the 974 North Peak to Peak Highway well and cistern variant.
Hello. So I'm just going to summarize the aims since it's already been presented in your in your packet. The applicant is seeking a variance under Nederland Municipal Code 13-53 for a water connection variance and a cistern variance at 974 Peak to Peak Highway. Okay. The applicant is Earth Built Associates, that is going to be represented by Hutch tonight. Currently, the closest main is on, I might butcher this, Oot Street, which is about 500 feet from the property, given why the applicant is going for the water connection variance to be able to build a well on the property. Which a well variance may have come above you guys before, I'm not sure. The second variance this individual is going for is something we've been seeing with a couple of properties that people are trying to develop on right now in town. The code currently states, one second here. Sorry.
Wells.
No. Hydrants.
So the current code, so it gets a little tricky with regards to hydrants. There is code language, but it's specific to connecting a hydrant to a main. And obviously this is for private use. So we actually defaulted back to the 2018 International Fire Code and Appendix C, which does talk about that the requirement is 313, I look to Andrew here, 313 feet from in order for the connection for firefighting uses.
So that to build that hydrant, we were looking at a rough estimate about $80,000. And that would be on this individual. And so after seeing this come up a couple times now with some meetings with individual, we worked with Fire Marshal Jocelyn to try to find solutions to really be able to encourage housing, but give opportunities that make sense for the town and the individual developing to really be able to make this affordable. And so Fire Marshal Jocelyn put in a ton of work, and there is attached to this, the cistern resolution. And so you will see this again. There are more than one individual going after this, but this would allow the individual to build a cistern according to the measurements that Fire Marshal Jocelyn has put in this resolution. So for this specific applicant, how I would explain it, and I will have him speak further to it, is it's 2 cisterns that are connected that would be used for the fire department. And this individual is also going for another cistern for the well that would create a higher pressure for the water for the development of the house. And that is pretty much it. So I will let Hutch speak more to this and answer any questions you guys might have before bringing questions before the board. Hutch, go ahead.
And Hutch, I did have to mute you. There was a little background noise, so if you want to come off mute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Yeah, Britt, you pretty much covered all the items there. The 2 cisterns will be 2 3,500-gallon cisterns, total 7,000 gallons to meet the requirement of, Andrew said that we need 500 gallons of water flow continuous for a half hour for fire mitigation. And we're hoping to put one more cistern close to the house that would hold the well water to give us increased pressure for domestic use.
And maybe I can just, if you can, maybe I'll just add in a couple of things. So as we noted in our aim, there is an intention to extend the main, but we're not looking, it's like a 2030 project. And so really recognizing that there is no access, but as Britt noted, that the desire, of course, is to create more housing, even if it's single family residence. And this would be a barrier, which is why there is a request for both the well and the cistern here, and recognizing that the fire department has identified kind of other ways in which they can support some of these odd parcels, but it's not common. We don't have a ton of empty parcels that are not connected to our utility system, but it does happen, in which case you do seek this variance. And as Britt explained, it has come up more than one time. So probably not the last time you'll see this, but it is because a lot of our empty parcels are on more of the outskirts of town where we don't have utilities connection. And I don't know, Andrew, if you have anything you want to add from utilities manager perspective.
No, I think it's important for that if properties are near utilities that we need to require that they connect for the financial sustainability of the system. But for these one-off lots that are a good distance away from the utilities, it doesn't make sense to create a big hardship for them financially. But I think one thing to look down in the future is if we do build water or sewer infrastructure, then we're going to need to look at how we can require people to connect if they already have a well or a septic. So that's for another night, but something to think about. Again, just for the financial sustainability of the infrastructure.
And I might add too that Hutch is ready to pull building permits, has already submitted plans, has been eager, very communicative. So as town staff, no concerns approving this.
Any other clarifying questions? Or we go to public comment? If not, we'll go ahead and go to public comment. Yeah.
You only have one online and one in the room.
Okay, so it looks like, unless the one online, Barb, unless you have something to say, we are going to go ahead and bring it back to the board for final discussion and a motion.
If Andrew Jocelyn and Andrew Bliss and Britt DeMink and Miranda Fisher are okay with this, so am I.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep. That's an
And I
easy
will say,
sell on my part.
Andrew Jocelyn's not on tonight, but I mean, he put in a significant amount of work for the solution, which I really appreciate and has been fully supportive of whatever makes sense to the town and Andrews from a utilities perspective. So a lot of thought went into this, and he didn't have any further comments, but to just really clarify that the 2 cisterns were connected. So this is kind of 3 cisterns and the well variance.
Thanks, Brett. So I guess sounds like we're feeling good about it. Unless anyone has any questions, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion.
I'm just curious about the sewer situation.
Good.
Just out of
Okay, go ahead.
curiosity.
Say again, Jesse?
Jesse's curious about the sewer situation.
It's a similar circumstance. I believe the sewer is even further away from this property, so it will be septic, but Britt and Hutch might know more.
Yeah, we applied with Boulder County for the septic system. We have a design septic system.
Got it.
Going.
Cool.
Geomet from Boulder used to be they broke off from Cox when Cox passed away. It's Geomet designed it for us.
Great. Yeah, I'm in support of the variance request.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks,
I'll
Jesse.
go ahead and move to approve Resolution 2023-31, authorizing a well and cistern variance for 974 North Peak to Peak Highway.
Second.
Any discussion or any other questions or comments? If not, Miranda?
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Mayor Billy.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your time, Hutch and
Thanks a lot.
Brett.
We'll see you up
Appreciate it.
there. Okay, take care.
Yeah, it's Ute, like the native tribe. Utah is named after those folks. Let's go ahead and move right into our final action item for the evening, 7.3, the annexation ordinance amendment. And I think Tanya and Nicole will be presenting name.
Anya, if I could ask for you to do it, my voice is just, it's going. Sorry.
Can you vote?
Sure, for sure. So I imagine you guys have read the aim. I'm gonna get on the right page. And
Starting on 206 of the
there
updated.
we are. Okay, so I'm not gonna read it all to you guys. The question: does the BOT approve ordinance 846 amended in section 1527 related to voting on annexation petitions? So the main changes we wanted to add, and I'm going to read how it would be written. The amendment provides that a vote on an annexation is required, exception for 1, the properties owned by town, 2, properties in enclave, 3, the property is less than 10 acres, or the proposed zoning of the annexed property is not an increase in density, or the proposed zoning of the property to be annexed is a zoning other than residential or public. And the reason we are adding this is multifold, and I'm sure you guys know from past meetings how I've always felt about the voting for these kind of annexations. I feel it's an important process of democracy, that these annexations have long-term effects that could be generational effects, and that it's the least we can do to have the voters vote. Recently, with all the referendum and the protest and now the court date, I almost now feel like it's an advantage to the applicant to know what they're in for the moment they send it in, so they can start planning accordingly with their schedule and their campaigning. There is no wondering, will there be a referendum? Will this be will I protest it? Will I take this to court and dragging the situation on? So that's it. We can just go around and people can ask questions. I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but And I don't know if you want to add anything, Nicole.
No, I'm good at this point.
But I just got a little confused on the second, on page 207, the very top, those 3 points at the top of the second page of the aim. These are things that would not, those three situations would not be, would not enter into the triggered election.
Yeah, they're exceptions. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I read
That's,
that weird.
yeah, it's written, that's how Jennifer wrote it. I guess it's easier than saying what would require an election.
Yeah.
I do have a question for Attorney
Yes.
Madsen, and that is the addition of this. Is this line new? The Board of Trustees has the authority to determine whether these exemptions apply to an annexation.
That is, what do you mean new? This is
Was that already there in the?
in
the
one of the
ordinance?
drafts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was in one of the drafts.
It was in one of the, but it wasn't in the final one that we passed.
No.
Right. I'm just wondering about that line, just because it seems like these things are factual things. Like, why does the Board of Trustees need to determine?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to know exactly. The density, I think.
Because what if a
it's
board
addressed-
decides that's not 10 acres?
Yeah.
And it is.
Right. I would say that it should be read in the context of what the exceptions are. So it's not like the board has complete authority to determine whether the exemptions apply, but it's has interpretive authority, which the board does anyways.
Anyway, right. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
If that was a necessary line. It just sort of gives someone the idea to interpret stuff strangely. It gives me the idea to interpret stuff strangely.
You mean have it written in that these are the exceptions? I mean, is that what?
No.
Trustee Coombs Ismail is reading the ordinance language
Oh, okay.
27B, and then there's a little paragraph that's added at the end.
Yeah, it seemed a little redundant, and then gave me like ideas of like how a board could basically say that a size of a parcel was not actually the size of a parcel.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I guess the density, you could argue, it'd be like, well, not so far away, you have apartments, so, maybe it's not denser, I suppose that.
Just if we were aiming for clarity, that seemed to muddy the waters to me a little bit, but I guess we have that authority anyway.
Right. Yes, as the legislative body, you'd have authority to interpret your ordinances.
Just a question. I'm not.
I mean, maybe we could add the word, I always wanted, and maybe you don't like the word for a reason, adjacent. Like with the density, the proposed zoning of the annex property is not an increase in density. I mean, of what, of the adjacent properties, because that it doesn't.
Well, it says contiguous properties.
Yeah.
Oh, where does it say that?
In 3A.
In the ordinance.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's just understood it's those that are touching it. Okay. Sounds good. So I'm in favor of this, as you can imagine. So I guess we'll go around and everybody can ask questions, and then I get this done before 10. I think we can do it. Maybe.
No, yeah, thanks. Sorry, I'm looking. Oh. God, how do you do that? So any other clarifying questions for Tanya and Nicole and or Jennifer? If not, we'll go to public comment. Kayla? Thanks for staying with us. I liked your comments on EcoPass.
Kate Evans, 1250 Eldora Road. It's 20 minutes till 10 here. And I understand the RTD gentleman drove all the way up here and you wanted to send him home. this is a really big thing you guys are taking on, and I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate the work that you've put into it. But I have to tell you, it's been you know, you're making the laws and you're doing this to protect the town. But you're also losing the fact that by making this as laboriously, expensively, controllingly, dictatorial as it sort of sounds, you may be scaring a lot of people away from doing what is going to keep this town vital. And that's new people moving here that can afford to live here. You just spent almost an hour and a half talking about raising the wages of the people that are working here. Doesn't make any difference if you raise their wages if they can't afford, if they can't find a place to live, if they can't afford a place to live, because there's no product and the rents are so high. So it's going to be a game you're always trying to play catch up. For those of you who know me and know how long I've been working on Bobcat Ridge to try and bring affordable housing, and I mean affordable housing, to this community, I want to thank you, but I do feel like we've been trampled in the process. And it's really easy as a trustee who sits in a house to make edicts about what is going to be required to bring housing to people who don't have a place to live. So when you vote for this, could you put at least a little bit of elasticity in it that gives the landowner the impetus to want to stick with it, because there is light at the end of this tunnel, to try and do something that's going to solve a lot of problems in the town. And if I sound like I'm a little stick up my butt, it might be because I do have. I think, you know, we've talked around a lot of things, and a lot of this language that's going in here is really easy to put in. Hey, let's add this to the cart. Let's add this to the cart, and make it so difficult that you're going to scare people away from trying to do this. And I'm about this close to it. It's not a threat. It's just a reality. It's been 10 years. That's a long time to stick with something where there's very little support from my community, where I'm trying to do this for the people of this community. So if I sound a little peeved, I don't mean to be, but it is frustrating. And I hope you appreciate how many meetings, how many people, how many boards, how many mayors, how many trustees, how many county commissioners I have talked to in 10 years on this project to try and do this for this community. And I feel like I don't get much support back from you guys. And that's where it's the stick. So I thank you for what you're doing. I hope you take into account that this is a really big part of what the laws you're making for the town. You don't want to shy people away. You want to encourage them for the betterment of the people in this community. By making it so difficult, are you really helping the people in the community? It's a good question.
Thanks,
you.
Kayla.
I'd like to respond. Can you keep Kayla up there at the microphone, please?
Oh, we can ask Kayla to come back to the microphone, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hey, Kayla, so my question to you is, what part of this process now makes it more difficult for you?
What part of the process isn't working for me?
What part of the process that with this new language that we're implementing, what part of it is making it more difficult for you? Apologize, my voice is a little.
I think if one puts an application in, if the language is still in there where you guys get to decide whether you think it's a viable product or not. You guys get to decide every time you turn around and add something new, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. The onus is all Now I have to go to an election and the applicant has to pay for a special election. Why can't that be in a regular election? Why can't that be a
So,
ballot issue
Well, I mean-
or a question asked at a regular
It
election?
can be, it's
Could
not,
be, yeah.
nothing's calling a special election.
It's scheduled in
Yeah,
that
it's
way.
just contingent upon the timing. So if you time it to a regular election, then it would be part of the regular election and you wouldn't have to pay for it.
Kayla, this was language that was already written into our annexation ordinance, that if it did go to a special election, the applicant would have to pay for it. This is nothing new. We're not changing that at all.
Right. That was just an example, Nicole. I was also, it's the ability for the board to decide or not decide. If it is going to go to the people for a vote, then it goes to the people for a vote. But I've sat through board meetings where you guys say, hey, you know what, we've been elected, so let's be the ones that make the decisions and do the governing here. And now you're turning it back over to the people to vote on it. So it's just, it's like
Yeah, so something else I want to clarify here.
a little bit of
is-
inconsistency there.
Well, so one of the things to clarify is that what we've learned over this past process with the petition, referendum petition, and this annexation ordinance that was written cuts the number in half. So by state statute, 5% of the electorate would be about over 60. This requires 30. It is, I cannot conceive of any situation where a referendum petition would not be filed, because to get 30, if folks were able to get 60 signatures just recently, 30 is going to be no problem. What I'm seeing is that this is more of a burden on the applicant, because I'll just going through the process of what we've experienced, that once the annexation ordinance, or excuse me, once the annexation application is, and Jennifer can kind of correct me on my wording here, is, deemed sufficient, or the Board of Trustees says it's
okay.
Once it's approved, I mean, what this potentially does,
and there's another
cut
40
60
days.
days off the process. If 60 days that we're like in right now was something else. And that was the part that was intriguing, is like a triggered election tightens would shorten the whole process.
Yeah, so 30 days from there, 40 days then after that, there can be a protest on that referendum petition. Now we're into, we're at 70 days. And then from there, as like we're experiencing, there is the potential that goes into a lawsuit. And so it is way more of a viable probability that this causes the applicant to be in limbo for 6 months or more. And I'm saying, wait a second, that this 30 signature petition, as again, and I will say it again, as much I was so proud of members of the BOT to come together to actually compromise, this is an unnecessary step. And I'm thinking from on behalf of the applicant, holy cow, like we're doing some undue burdensome work and waiting time. If it just went to an election, then this person gets their information way more quicker. It gets the resolution way more quicker than going through this other process. And so that is one of my reasonings of going and pushing through this language, is it is of a better circumstance for the applicant. I mean, unless you want to go through a 6-month waiting period with legal fees or whatnot, but I would assume that's not the case of what most applicants want to go through.
Yeah.
So are there any more?
I think the point is that we realized that no matter what we do, state law allows for someone to petition any decision that we make, right? And they'll get the signatures. And
Yep.
it causes this chain reaction of events that we've seen just
Right.
over the last few months, that puts everybody in a worse situation than if we simply put it to a vote and we're done with it. And that's the way that we're thinking about it.
100%. This had you in mind, Kayla, and other folks more in mind, just as much as having the electorate go ahead and come to a vote. Sorry.
Any more?
We were trying to
things
make
with-
it easier, not harder.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't feel that way.
I
have to
understand.
tell you.
And I'll concede that I think there are probably other things in the ordinance that could be eased on the part of the applicant, but this I don't think is one of them. I think this particular amendment actually does make it easier for the applicant rather than
You
harder.
promise me that?
Well, I can't.
No
promise anything.
promises.
I actually
Sheila.
would say yes. I would say this makes it way more easier. You're gonna get the answers way more quickly than if we go through this route of what is established today.
Yeah, based on our current experience, we can project it's likely going to be easier, but that's the best we can do.
Kayla, are you following the referendum on the rezoning of the First Street lot? And I mean,
Ron's property over
Yeah.
there behind, a little bit.
No,
Oh.
this whole
Look it up because it's been a process and it's still not over.
the hop parking lot with the hops growing in it, the rezoning. So I do feel like we need to move on, but I'm telling you what, we're in the middle of something that's kind of making this whole amendment make more sense.
Okay, like I said, I don't mean to sound like sour grapes and whatever, but it's been a long process for me, and you guys have been working on it, and I appreciate it.
We're making smaller steps towards, I think, a reasonable process for the town, but
Yeah. No, you have to write something that's going to apply to everybody, and it's hard. but
indeed.
It's,
And there is no circumstance where there can be an exemption because any decision we make,
no.
all
of
you need
course
to do is
not.
get
I'm
60
not
people to
asking
sign a
for
piece
that.
of paper,
I'm just
right?
saying that the process has
Yeah.
been, anyway, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kayla. Barb, any comments? Public comments? If not, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion. Does anyone, what do the trustees have to say?
I think this is cleaner. I mean, I was in favor of this model to begin with, so of course I would say, yeah, let's do it. I'm surprised it's before us, honestly, but
Then do you want to make the motion or
Can,
do I?
well,
yeah, can I just, I mean, and I'm with you. I mean, I'm kind of, I initially voted for a triggered election, and then I voted for this great, that I felt like was a great compromise that made the whole annexation ordinance work that Jesse and Eric came up with, and now given everything we're in, I'm definitely with you on the amendment, but around the triggered, the one thing that I just want to ask Jennifer real quick. The one thing is like, that comes to me as like an example. So say the high school, middle school wants to be annexed and say it's 10.5 acres. I don't actually know it's acres, but no one really has a problem with it. We're kind of, that's my situation where like we're forced into an election on something that, in my mind at least, no one's against. Is there an exit ramp from that, or are we bound to an election?
Is that more than 10 acres?
Okay. I mean, I meant to do my homework on that today. I don't know, but I would say it's near that.
I mean, I think
Something
the
you
most
hear is
reasonable way to
happening?
do this is for people to time their petitions with regularly scheduled elections, so they don't have to pay, and we just do the election and get it done with, and then the town can be on board with it. We all know that we voted one way or the other, and
So it's kind
just
of
cleaner.
it's kind of
cleaner all around.
like a rubber stamp of approval from town, even if it was supposedly a slam dunk in the first place.
Well, Billy, we thought about what you were saying, and Nicole can attest, and so can Jennifer. We tried wording something, if there's been no public comment disputing an annexation, and they can be exempt. It just had too much wiggle room in it for interpretation. I mean, I think we really did take that into consideration to come up with language for it, but we couldn't find the right language that would not be subject to too much interpretation of what is dissatisfaction, what are complaints, you know, like, I mean, so again, if it's a good project, it's gonna pass. Elections, as we know, because we just did at least one special election, and what was it, $3,000 or $4,000? I honestly don't, in a huge, I mean, it's nothing when you're building, when you're doing a development. I mean, I know every penny counts, but it really, if that's going to break the bank, then you can't afford to do what you're doing. But yeah, time it every 2 years, we have an election.
Okay, well, thanks. That makes sense. I appreciate that you guys put thought into that, and
No, we
it
did.
does,
I mean,
it does
I
make
did.
sense. It
I
would be
wanted to
muddy.
put something in there. We just couldn't find the right words.
Jesse, do you have any thoughts? Because you and me were the ones that didn't quite nod the other
2 minutes.
weeks.
We got 2
And
minutes.
actually, well, we have 2 minutes, so if you want 5 minutes, we'll make a motion to extend or more time. Let me know.
I didn't feel like our previous ordinance was broken in any way. I liked that it was an invitation to engage democracy and to trigger a townwide vote through 30 signatures. It sounds to me like the majority of the board is in favor of this amendment, and I will support whatever decision we make as a vote. I'm fine with going to a vote and to not. Yeah, I'm happy with our existing ordinance. I don't see the compelling need to change it. But I feel that I've already made all my arguments and I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to make a motion to approve ordinance 846, amending section 1527 related to voting on annexation petitions.
Second.
Any discussion, John? I know I didn't quite give you a chance for a final word. I'm just watching time.
No, I appreciate that, Mayor Billy. I feel very strongly in
Thank
a
you. Go ahead.
certain way about this, but yeah, I agree with Jesse very strongly on this, but I also see the deep sense in why the time was spent to do this, and I respect Nicole's research as well as Tanya's on this, so I have to yield to them for their due diligence on this.
Thanks. Miranda, do you mind taking the roll?
Trustee Severs.
No.
Trustee Sterling.
Yes.
Trustee Mountain.
No.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mohold.
Yes.
And thanks, John. I didn't mean to cut you off, but thank you. The motion passes and it's 10 o'clock.
Motion to adjourn.
Great.
Second.
Any other business?
No.
Okay. I motion in the second.
Question is the thing we deferred last time, the fence thing. When am I going to deal with that?
Oh.
Oh, on the 18th. We on purpose didn't schedule it tonight. Yeah.
Okay.
That's next week?
Yes, fence code.
Okay.
Anyone opposed to the adjournment?
No.
Great. Meeting adjourned at
Thanks, everyone.
1 p.m.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Everybody.
This is a good one.